Good morning. Welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone has had a fantastic time watching Wimbledon so far. We have two epic men's semi-finals lined up on Friday. Novak Djokovic against Lorenzo Musetti and defending champion Carlos Alcaraz against Daniil Medvedev. Now, just quickly before I go into previewing and predicting these two brilliant semi-finals on paper, I would like to thank anybody that has tuned into my content this week. I've had around 10,000 views, which is great numbers for myself, and I've thoroughly enjoyed making a return to YouTube this week. And also, if you would like to subscribe, it does just take a couple of seconds and it would really help me on my journey into hopefully working in tennis media one day. I use this YouTube channel to improve my skills, improve my tennis knowledge, hopefully get some more eyes on the sport, and it's a sport that I just thoroughly enjoy watching and analysing and sharing my opinions on. So now looking at these two brilliant semi-finals and how I'm going to do this, I'm going to quickly review their quarter-final performances and then look at how I think both players can have success in the matchup before finally predicting who I think will win and reach the Wimbledon final on Sunday. First match I'm going to look at is Alcaraz against Medvedev, and Alcaraz leads the head-to-head between these two players 4-2. They have met at Wimbledon twice and it's 1-1. But the first meeting was in 2021, in which Medvedev won in straight sets, but Alcaraz was around 75th in the world at that point, obviously still very young at that point, being probably 18. So it's very difficult to assess that one when Alcaraz has become such a dominant player since then. They met last year in the semi-finals, which Alcaraz won in straight sets, but I do think we're going to have a better match this year and certainly more competitive. Looking quickly back at Medvedev's quarter-final performance against Jannik Sinner, and I was thoroughly impressed with the way Medvedev switched up his tactics. I said before that match that he lost his last previous 8 meetings against Alcaraz, Djokovic and Sinner, so he had to recognise that he needed to change his tactics, he needed to be more aggressive. I don't think you're going to beat a player like Alcaraz, Djokovic or Sinner by just defending and counter-punching and being slightly passive at times and allowing them to dictate and hit through you consistently. Although Medvedev is one of the best counter-punchers in the world, doing that consistently against those top 3 players over 5 sets is incredibly difficult physically, mentally, and just being able to execute it. So I said before the Sinner match, he had to serve incredibly well. I think he had to be more aggressive than he usually is on a grass court, attack the net when he can, and he actually won more net player points than Sinner did, which is an unbelievable stat and a stark difference to what Medvedev would usually do when coming in the court. Despite that not being his A game, I think he done it really well. You know, although Jannik Sinner was below par, he was very ill throughout the match. I think you can't take away the performance of Medvedev and the way he switched up his tactics. I think definitely surprised Sinner. He did go missing in the first set tiebreak with 2 double faults at a crucial stage, and you wonder whether Sinner would then take over and Medvedev had perhaps missed his chance to get a foothold in the match. But as I mentioned there, Sinner was ill, and Medvedev is a nightmare opponent when you're not feeling well. He causes you to run, rally, work for everything. He doesn't give anything away, and Sinner had to try and do something different. He had to try and shorten the points, but he couldn't execute consistently. He just didn't have the power to hit through Medvedev, who absorbed his pace very well. I think it was a factor in both that Sinner wasn't feeling great. I think that definitely took some of the sting out of his shots and some of the power from his ground strokes in the day. But I also think Medvedev read Sinner very well and sort of used the attacking nature and used his serve to counter punch and also hurt Sinner as well by hitting many winners and attacking the net regularly. Sinner battled very hard. He took it to a 5th set, but I just felt Medvedev was always the more solid player. He moved Sinner around, he pushed him wide, steps inside the court, he hit winners, and it was a very good performance. I think it's a disappointing result for Sinner, being the world number 1 and exiting at the semi-final stage last year as well. I think he came here as a certain favourite, and you just couldn't find his rhythm in this match. I think the hip was not so much an issue. I think he was just ill, which is a very unfortunate time to happen in the Wimbledon quarter-final. But it's a huge win mentally for Medvedev to end that 8-match losing streak against the big 3. And he'd also lost his last 5 meetings against Sinner on what was an unfavourable surface for him in the quarter-final. I think it's a superb win that will give him huge confidence going into this Alcaraz match. Talking about Alcaraz against Tommy Paul, the first 90 minutes of that match were just tennis at its finest. So much unbelievable shot making from both players. The counter punching, the net play, the outrageous winners, the physical, the athleticism, the both just went all out from ball one, and you wondered that if it stayed at that pace and that intensity, who was going to outlast each other. Paul did lead 7-5 to love, but it was difficult to see him standing up physically and maintaining that level. We know Alcaraz from winning these 3 Grand Slams that he can play at such a high level for 4 or 5 hours if he needs to. Matches at a real war of attrition with brutal hitting and extended rallies will always favour Alcaraz. He's had success on the clay, winning the French Open this year. That sets him up perfectly for coming to Wimbledon, where the matches aren't, on average as brutal. The rallies are technically shorter. And Alcaraz has got the youth, the power, the speed, the mentality, the fight, the support of the crowd. And he's only ever lost one match in a 5th set. That was to Medvedev on a hard court. So he's got a fantastic 5th set record, and you felt that the physicality of the opening set probably suited Alcaraz, even though he lost it. I think it took some of the sting and the legs away from Paul, and we saw the error start to creep up as the match went on. What I liked about Alcaraz, I think he really targeted, especially the running forehand of Paul, which broke down from set 2. He couldn't live with Alcaraz's natural power and consistency, and Paul served poorly throughout, which I wasn't expecting, and that really allowed Alcaraz to attack his second serve and hit as many clean winners as possible. He really ran away with the match from the 3rd set onwards, 6-2, 6-2, and he just beat Paul into submission. I think he was consistently going hard to Paul's forehand, and he just couldn't deal with the sheer ferocity of Alcaraz's ground strokes. And it was a great match to watch. I think Tommy Paul's had a fantastic grass court season. He's a great player to watch. He tried to beat Alcaraz at his own game, and for the first hour and a half, he'd done that. But he ran out of steam, and Alcaraz adapted, attacked the forehand consistently, and reached another Wimbledon semi-final. So now looking at the matchup in particular, how does Medvedev win this one? Well, pre-Sinner match, I'd have given Medvedev next to no chance of beating Alcaraz on a grass court, with the way that he played last year and the way that he adopted the tactics that he has done in recent years against Djokovic, Sinner and Alcaraz. Alcaraz won this one in straight sets in Wimbledon 2023, and I think Medvedev has recognised that he needs to be more aggressive when possible. As I've said there, he can't beat these 3 from behind the baseline. He needs to serve, I think, 70% first serves minimum. And Medvedev's a player that can get in a stunning service rhythm. He can win service games in less than a minute when his serve is going as well as it possibly can. And I do feel like he needs to have a great serving day just to stop Alcaraz attacking on return and immediately getting Medvedev out of position on the court. I feel like Medvedev absorbed Sinner's ball striking very well, and I think although Sinner did have an off day, it was a great sign that Medvedev didn't allow Sinner any real rhythm or any spells of a beatdown. And you have to give Medvedev credit as well for recovering so well mentally as he did from losing the first set, in a set that you could argue he should have won. I think he led in the first set tie break and double faulted it 3-1, I think it was. So to recover from that and be as calm and composed as he was is not something that we've seen all the time from Medvedev over the years, which just showed you that he was really confident in the tactics that he was adopting, that he would break down Sinner eventually. I think he has to maintain depth as much as possible and keep Alcaraz as far back as possible. We know Alcaraz is a player that can hit winners from pretty much anywhere in a tennis court, and if he does hit ridiculous winners from places on the court that he shouldn't, then I think you've just got to hold hands up and say fair play to him. Alcaraz is still having slight lapses in concentration. He is losing sets in this championship, and I think Medvedev needs to recognise that, be aggressive where he can, punish when Alcaraz does have a lapse in concentration and perhaps not play his best tennis. And I think the biggest thing for this match is Medvedev can't be passive. He can't give Alcaraz short balls. He's got to keep him on the move. He's got to try and be aggressive. He's got to keep attacking the net, which he done with success against Sinner. But I think the big thing is going to be serve. If he hits too many second serves, Alcaraz is going to jump all over it and dictate rallies early. I think if Medvedev can get in a great service rhythm and be more aggressive than he was in this matchup last year, then he can definitely have success against Alcaraz. And in terms of how Alcaraz wins this match, I think last year he did an incredible job of taking advantage of Medvedev's deep return position and attacking the net relentlessly. And that's something I forgot to mention there. Medvedev changed up his return position against Sinner's serve throughout the match. And I think that's something that really worked as well. Sinner found difficult to adapt to. And Medvedev is a smart player. As I've said there, he played with his return position against Sinner with real success. And he will know himself that he can't just go out there and repeat the tactics that he had last year against Alcaraz. Otherwise, it'll be another straight sets whitewash. He made it too easy for Alcaraz last year, allowed him to dominate, allowed him to attack the net when he wanted to and shorten the points. And that's something that he can't do again. I think Alcaraz will be aggressive again. You know, it suits grass court players, aggression and moving inside. But I think he's got to be more patient and accurate. You know, Medvedev loves redirecting pace and Russian players. So I don't think Alcaraz can just use his pace unnecessarily, you know, down the middle of the court. That's exactly what Medvedev wants, to be able to redirect and move Alcaraz out of position. He's an excellent counterpuncher. In my opinion, the best counterpuncher in the world, Medvedev. And I think you would try to use Alcaraz's aggression against him. And Alcaraz hasn't played his best tennis. You know, pre-Paul, I thought he not scraped through the draw, but was only playing at a par level. His forehand has been erratic throughout this championships. He has made quite a lot of unforced errors, which is unlike Alcaraz. So if Medvedev can get a lot of balls back in court, move Alcaraz around by redirecting his pace, then perhaps he can extract enough errors from Alcaraz's racket. I also think that despite his power, Alcaraz should use the slice and drop shot a lot. You know, Medvedev isn't the greatest mover on the tour. He's not particularly at home around the net usually, although he did use that well against Sinner. And he's not a great player when he has to generate his own pace off a backhand slice, for example. And I think although Alcaraz is a power pack player, that it would be a smart player to use the backhand slice, keep it low, cut through the court, and make Medvedev hit up on the ball, which is something that he's not at home doing. Alcaraz will dominate from the mid-court, and I think he just should invite Medvedev in and become the counter-puncher sometimes. I think that's a tactic that he can certainly use against Medvedev and may have success doing so. In terms of match prediction, I think from last year, Alcaraz really peaked from the quarterfinal stage onwards. His performance against Paul was the performance of the championship so far for him. And this is a huge opportunity to reach the Wimbledon final when you consider that he beat Medvedev in straight sets here last year. Medvedev, his tactics and his switch-ups were very impressive against Sinner. The return position, the fact that he's more aggressive, the fact he attacked the net with real success. I was impressed by the way he recognised that he needed to do something different to beat one of these top three players at Wimbledon. And he executed it very well, winning in 5. But I do just think Alcaraz is striking the ball better than what Sinner did the other day. Alcaraz has got the advantage of watching the Sinner match and realising that Medvedev has changed his return position and might adopt different tactics. So Alcaraz can now adapt to that as well. And I think Alcaraz will win this one in 4 sets. Moving on now to Novak Djokovic against Lorenzo Musetti. Obviously, a huge disappointment for Alex de Minaur that he had to withdraw from the match against Djokovic before stepping on the court. He heard a crack in his final game, unfortunately, against Arthur Fils in his hip. Looks like it's going to rule him out for 4 to 6 weeks, which makes him unlikely to make the Olympics as well. Just a huge disappointment for a player that was in his first ever Wimbledon quarter-final, having a great 2024. So, best wishes to Alex de Minaur. Hope he recovers as soon as possible. Moving on to Novak Djokovic. It's usually a strange thing when a player withdraws, particularly this late in the tournament, because he's going to now have 3 days off. I think Djokovic is a player that's experienced that he uses to his benefit, and the fact that he's had knee surgery a month ago, I think, will only benefit him. His movement is getting better with each match, and I think, you know, he'll have been practicing hard. I don't think match sharpness would be too big a worry, especially when you consider the first set that Musetti played yesterday when he looked very nervous. I think the first set in this one would be big. Djokovic is favoured, in my opinion, to win this tournament now with his draw, with his experience, with the knee issue not looking a problem anymore. And I don't think Alcaraz has played his best tennis yet. We're also yet to see the best of Djokovic, but that's normal and understandable. I think when you consider the knee operation a month ago, and also the fact that Djokovic usually peaks at the back end of Grand Slams, then it's not a worry that we haven't seen his best tennis yet. It's a huge opportunity for Djokovic against Musetti, a player that he's got a 5-1 head-to-head record against, and I think grass is a perfect matchup for Djokovic against Musetti, where points are typically shorter. He can also match the variety of Musetti with quality and come forward. And I believe if Djokovic has a strong serving day and returning day, that he's going to be incredibly difficult to stop. You know, when he steps inside the baseline, he wins points majority of the time, and that's something that he does a great job of doing at Wimbledon, being able to move inside the baseline and come to the net. And I think the fact Djokovic is also a 7-time champion, whereas Musetti's making his Grand Slam semi-final debut, makes a huge difference in terms of handling the occasion and performing in the big moments. In terms of Musetti's quarter-final performance against Taylor Fritz, there was 3 shots in this match that I was majorly impressed by. Musetti, I thought, was a wonderful performance, and he almost reminded me of watching Ash Barty with the sheer variety that he had in his backhand. And I think he's a player that nobody else in the tour really replicates, and I think it's great to see different styles of tennis reach the semi-finals. You know, we see a lot of big serving on grass now with the likes of Zverev and usually Fritz and Medvedev and even Djokovic to a point. So to see Musetti really use his creativity, use his drop shots, his slice, his forehand into the open court was a brilliant match to watch, and a great story for Musetti to reach his first ever semi-final. So the first shot I'm going to talk about was a chip and block return, and I thought this was a very clever ploy from Musetti against Fritz, who is a big server and suited to the grass. It allowed Musetti to stand deeper and take more time to get a look at the serve, and I do feel that took away Fritz's ability to hit a 1-2 punch and also get unreturned serves. We know Fritz is a player that gets a lot of aces on grass, but I think he only won 65% of first serve points, which is staggering for a player of Fritz's quality on serve on a grass court. And I also felt like the chip and block return gave Musetti time to get neutral position on the baseline, because obviously it takes longer for the ball to reach Fritz when it is chipped back. And it made Fritz have to hit up on the ball rather than down from shoulder height into the open court, which is what he likes. It was forcing Fritz to go long, make unforced errors, not get into a rhythm, or play a really basic rally shot to Musetti that allowed him into the point. I think the shot that won Musetti this match was the slice, and Musetti was looking to hit the slice almost immediately in every point. On grass, we know it's a shot that, especially the way Musetti plays it, where he really cuts into the ball and plays it with lots of pace, that it stays low and flies through the court because of the low friction and the soft bounce. On a hard court with a more check and bounce, I think that would suit Fritz, or certainly give him more time to do what he wanted with the ball. But Fritz just didn't possess the ability yesterday to re-slice or hit through the spin from a low position, and that meant that he either made an unforced error or left Musetti a short ball to attack into the open court. And I thought that was a really impressive pattern of play, with the chip return, go straight to the slice, get the short ball, attack into the open court, and that was something that he replicated throughout the match. And Fritz just wasn't able to withstand or, as I've said, re-slice, and there wasn't really a lot he could do to combat the style of play that Musetti was possessing yesterday. And also the backhand, I likened it to Ash Barty's, and I just think the way he used it, whether it was a slice, down the line, cross court, he hit so many lob winners yesterday as well, drawing Fritz into the net and then lobbing him over the top. He executed that, again, pattern of play excellently. And Fritz just didn't quite know it was coming. He couldn't get into a rhythm. He couldn't read the Musetti backhand, and it was just one of those shots that just tortured Fritz from ball one to match point. He had too much creativity, too much court craft. He kept Fritz guessing, and he couldn't sustain any momentum or dominate at any point of the match. I also feel like Musetti served incredibly well under pressure, and his forehand was exceptional, particularly into the open court. So now looking at this matchup, how does Djokovic win? I think Musetti's had success against Djokovic on clay in the past. I think he's led 2 sets to love at the French Open against Djokovic. He also led 2 sets to 1 this year at the French Open before Djokovic dominated both 5th sets. And I think that was down to the longer baseline exchanges typically happening at the French Open. Musetti can use his backhand variety and cause problems with his forehand, Whereas on hard courts, Djokovic is dominated with his aggressive tactics by using his serve and return to go deep and then attack the court and shorten the points. We've seen Djokovic have a lot of success against Musetti on a hard court in the past, and I think that's something that you look to replicate on grass, where it typically plays even faster. Musetti's returned exceptionally throughout this tournament. He's faced some very, very big servers in terms of Pericard and Fritz, but whether he can physically do it against Djokovic is another question. As his first Grand Slam quarterfinal, he's played, a lot of sets in this tournament and spent a lot of time on court, whereas Djokovic has obviously had the walkover, which is a huge advantage in terms of not damaging the body. Djokovic has also got the experience of playing Musetti 6 times. He knows his game, he knows his serve, and I think Djokovic will look to attack early in points. I don't think he'll want to get into long exchanges with Musetti, who can use that forehand into the open court. He can use the backhand variety, he can use the slice. But I also think it's worth noting that the Musetti slice will have less effect against Djokovic than it did in the match against Taylor Fritz. Djokovic is a much better volleyer around the net, and he's also very good from hitting down low. Djokovic is a player that can re-slice. He's got an excellent backhand slice. He's used a tactic against Federer, perhaps in the past, and particularly on a grass court. For Djokovic's cross-court forehand from down low is very good. He often uses it cross-court to move himself up the court and attack the net. And you've also got to take into account Djokovic's quality of serve and return on a grass court is without doubt the best of all time, and that gives him such a huge advantage. In terms of how I think Musetti wins, I think he was poor in the opening set against Fritz. He needs to find a way of combating that. I think it's very difficult in your first Grand Slam semi-final centre court against Djokovic. You're naturally going to have nerves, but you can't afford to give Djokovic an opening set. He's a brilliant front runner, and Musetti's going to have to start this match very well to have a chance. I feel like he's got to serve well again and look to dictate early. As I mentioned there, the slices won't have the same effect on Djokovic, but I do feel like Musetti's at his best when he's creative, and you've got to admit that Djokovic's physicality and movement hasn't been tested to the max yet. I think Fernley was probably the one that tested Djokovic's movement most, but he hasn't been pushed to a fifth set, and Rune didn't push Djokovic at all. Was far too defensive in that match and allowed Djokovic to step in the court far too easily. Musetti needs to just try and extend the rallies, keep Djokovic deep, try to use the forehand return to really attack, and I don't feel like defending and counter-punching will be enough to beat Djokovic in a grass court as it was against Fritz yesterday. And I just think he needs to find a way of trying to be more aggressive and hitting more winners rather than trying to extract errors from Djokovic, who can deal with the variety, can deal with the slice by re-slicing or using the cross-court forehand. He's had success from extending points against Djokovic in the past, but I think that's going to be very difficult to do again. And you've got to question whether Musetti has it in his legs to be able to extend points against Djokovic, who will be the more fresh. Match prediction, I think Djokovic is improving throughout the tournament. He's got experience of facing Musetti 6 times. He's got a fantastic head-to-head record. Can Musetti physically stand up again in another long match against Djokovic, which it'll be? I don't think it's a great court for Musetti to play Djokovic on, being a grass court. If this was a clay court match, and I think the outcome could be different, but I'm going to go with Djokovic's quality of serve and return and ability to match the variety of Musetti and Djokovic to win this one in straight sets. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I have got a couple of notes on there of why I do YouTube and also which events I'll be covering: the Olympics, Cincinnati Open, US Open, Shanghai Masters, Paris Masters, WTA Finals and ATP Finals, and maybe a couple of tournaments in between as well. If you would leave your predictions for the semi-finals in the comment section below, I do always enjoy reading those. So thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.